We build tools for digital human rights. We embed them into the internet, whether it's security, self-custody, privacy, access to finance, proof of personhood. We believe that these are rights that people should have, and we should build resilient technology that prevents centralized capture of these rights. And we just cannot find anything that we can actually use for privacy protocol, anything that's self-custodial enough. So we're like, okay, what does it take to build a self-custodial wallet as a service? And it just uncovered so many just crazy issues that I could not imagine why we were using these as our wallet. Like, it's tough to, like, I'm not blaming the companies necessarily. I think it's really tough to build a secure and self-custodial wallet when you're working in an iframe, when you're embedding it in an app. We see WAP as the main mission. I remember maybe 2 years ago, we were working on the architecture of the wallet as a protocol thing. How do we actually make this self-custodial? And we figured out everything except for censorship resistance. And then I see David's message in, I think, some cryptography group chat. It's 2PC MPC, a scalable non-collusive MPC. And I was like, oh, non-collusive MPC, that sounds very interesting. And I looked into it, it actually solves the exact problem that we're facing. So I just messaged David and I was like, okay, we should meet up. Yeah, we met up and I was like, oh my God, this is like the coolest team in crypto. Like I've always thought they're one of the top teams in the industry. And building on Ego has been great. I mean, we've been building on Ego for a while, like starting from when they first launched testnet. Yeah, I mean, the reason we used Sui for it was, as for David's recommendation, which made a ton of sense, that Sui uses Move and Sui is also like very fast. So for security policies, you want something that's like, one, very secure, like Move, and two, it's not going to like cost a lot of money or take a lot of time to like make little updates to the security policy. So it just made a ton of sense to do it in Move and do it on Sui. It's been a great experience.
So everyone, today we have Nanak from humntech here. There's a lot to unpack here. One of the reasons I was so excited to talk to you was kind of solution you're bringing without compromising the core values of the space, like decentralization, trustlessness, and all that. So before we get into all that, could you give us a short intro about you?
Yeah, so I'm Nanak. I'm one of the founders of humantech. Intro about me. I mean, I think as you mentioned, Suraj, I've definitely had a very circuitous path getting into crypto. I was working in neuroscience, my co-founder as well, actually. We were doing computational cognitive neuroscience, and we were studying fMRI data, four-dimensional brain data, and doing all sorts of like machine learning, statistical analyses on it. And I think we both got a little bit bored of academia, and we were working on a neuroscience hackathon where my co-founder actually was like, oh, we can use IPFS to share data between labs, share them across labs. It made a lot of sense for these large data sets. It was hard to do good data sharing that way. So this is how I learned about IPFS for a neuroscience hackathon with Shadi. And then a year or two later, Shadi's like, hey, I'm done with my PhD. I've been just building decentralized science. If you've ever heard of that, I was like, no, I never heard of it, but it sounds cool. And so that got me into Web3. We started going to like conferences and making identity stuff. Got into Ziki because we realized we were doxing people on chain. We were about to dox people on chain. So I'm like, we need to stop building this. They were building it and add privacy. And from that privacy journey, got into cryptography, and now we're somehow here.
It's a very interesting journey where you started and where you are at right now. And I think people, when you look into human tech, like someone going into Twitter or looking into the handle, they don't directly, like there's a lot of layers of depth into what you're building. So for example, if someone comes to you in a conference and asks you, what is human tech or what is holonym? How would you describe it?
Yeah, so we build tools for digital human rights and we embed them into the internet. So the three products that we're really working on are on the wallet side, wallet as a protocol, which is embedding the right to security, self-custody, and access to finance in the web. And this is like an embedded wallet. You can think of like Privy or Web3 Auth or Magic, but a more self-custodial, free alternative that's soon to be open source and has really interesting security guarantees. And then our other line of product is more on the identity side. So we have Human Passport, which used to be Gitcoin Passport. We acquired them about a year ago. And this lets you prove your humanity in different ways. So prove you're a person, not a bot. You can do it in privacy preserving KYC methods using zero knowledge proofs, or you could do it in other methods like signing with Ethereum and have some AI model check based on your Ethereum activity, whether you're likely a real person or not. Because we think there should be lots of different ways to prove your identity, not just with KYC, but that's also a valuable alternative if it's done with privacy. Now, on the more backend facing side, so those are two user facing products. There's the wallet side and there's the identity side. But on the more backend side, on the more technical infrastructure layer, we have Human Network. So Human Network is used by both of our other products, ID and Passport. And what it does is called a verifiable oblivious pseudorandom function. It's a really cool cryptographic primitive, which essentially lets you take stuff like identities, things that are not very random, whether it's identity meaning like your actual name, date of birth, or more like phone number, email, password, security questions, biometrics, anything to authenticate or identify yourself, and create secure cryptographic keys out of it. So we have, so the ability pseudorandom function will essentially add entropy, add randomness to make them into secure keys. That's a bit more of a technical product, but it's used in the backend for other stuff.
When you describe it, like I have to go back and I think about the first experience I had using your product. Like I was claiming my ECA tokens, and the way I understood it is KIC kind of verification without your data being submitted to like a centralized entity. That's how I understood it. So like that, what is that product, and what is the core value proposition of that product?
Yeah, so Proof of Clean Hands is part of our identity suite where we have Human Passport, Human ID, where you essentially prove stuff about who you are without revealing who you are. So the way it works is you scan your government ID, and then you store it on your local device. So it's not stored on a server somewhere, it's stored on a local device, and you can prove stuff about it without revealing who you are. So you prove that you're not on a sanctions list, that you are in these allowed jurisdictions, you're over a certain age.
And that sounded like, look, when I was learning like a couple of years about CK proof, this was the basic example that some would always give. You could prove prove something without showing the proof. And it felt like, okay, this looks like a product that basically does what this CK proof analogy sounded like. And so basically it's like a human ID protocol, which it combined with like, how does Gitcoin or the product the platform that you acquired fit with this?
Yeah, so after acquiring a Gitcoin Passport, now Human Passport, we've merged Human ID entirely into it. So Human ID is one of the stamps on Passport, or actually a few of the stamps. So if you do the Human ID stamps, like the government ID, biometrics, or phone number for proof of clean hands, then you're doing a privacy preserving zero knowledge proof of your identity. So the Human ID is now just all within the Passport interface.
And Gitcoin already had a relatively big user base when you acquired it, right?
Yeah, so before the acquisition, Passport was actually our biggest customer. Bitcoin Passport. The vast majority of our users came from there, and so we've been really close to the team, and the acquisition just made a lot of sense for both teams. Passport has had over 2 million users at this point and secured over $450 million in airdrops, grants, other forms of funding gated by Sybil resistance proofs. So it's been quite impactful in the crypto space. Like most people have used Passport, and it really amazing being able to like work close with a team and bring them under the humantech brand.
So since acquisition, like who are the main what are the main use case or customers of Human ID right now? What are the main protocols using Human ID?
Yeah, so in terms of user numbers and protocol activity, by far the largest use case has been a lot of the major airdrops. So whenever we have a big airdrop, it just brings a lot of activity to Human Passport, Human ID. There are also some other really interesting use cases. Like recently, there is a Gitcoin round with the private voting. So Passport was used as a way of making sure that everybody doing the private funding round on Gitcoin was not a bot, because it's really hard with privacy to like check those things. So you want to make sure everybody participating as a passport score. So I think this is the coolest use I've seen recently, but the number one driver of volume has definitely been a lot of the major airdrops.
And like, how do you see like going forward? How challenging is it going to be with AI becoming like super important in the, like we are basically living in the AI era, and these bots could be 10x more powerful in a couple of years. It could act more like intelligently, like human like. And like going into that kind of era, how do you think this particular product you're building is going to be future proof?
Yeah, so identity is interesting in terms of what AI can do and what it can't do. AI can deepfake your image really well. We know that. We see like Banana do a really good job at it in like 30 seconds. AI will soon be able to fake any like two-dimensional data about you, like any picture. I mean, it is able to do that. So making fake IDs or making pictures of fake IDs is super easy right now. And even fake IDs that pass some steps in KYC, in online KYC. But the trick is passing liveness check. That's somewhere I don't see AI being able to succeed anytime soon, because the difficulty is reconstructing of the three-dimensional facial shape. So when you're doing a liveness check, you're rotating your face and you can map out a three-dimensional structure of the face. It's actually quite difficult to get this data on the three-dimensional structure of somebody's face. Now, of course, I'm doing this in a podcast. Maybe it's easier. Right? And definitely celebrities who are in like, hundreds of like or thousands of videos and like movies and stuff with high quality footage, like, then there's more of a concern. But I think for the average person without that much data on a three-dimensional structure of their face, it's much harder. For example, iPhones, they actually have like special sensors that, for the Face ID. It's not just using your camera, it's actually checking a three-dimensional shape of your face. And so I think this will take a lot longer to figure out how to crack.
So, and one of the things that like, another thing I like, came on my feed was basically, I never knew this before, that it was during the Monad airdrop that suddenly there was a huge issue with Privy wallet. Most people don't realize it, but all these wallets that come with all these applications that are, and it's like pretty centralized. Like the there's an irony, because like decentralization, you get thrown out very often in this space as like this buzzword and the trustlessness and all that. But the first onboarding step is usually very centralized. And I never knew this wallet as a service was such a single point of failure till that Monad airdrop event happened. And then, like, I was digging it up. I had a conversation with David, and Ikai was describing wallet as a protocol and all that. And he was always talking about humantech, you are building wallet as a protocol, this product on top of Ika. So how did you start thinking about this product? What is the story of this product, and how did you start building it?
Yeah. So the story of this product is that a few years ago, we were looking to use wallet as a service for our apps, and we were building privacy. So we wanted something that was really self-custodial, because we didn't want it to be like Google could see your data. Then it's like, okay, what's the point of us building a privacy protocol for just giving your data to Google, and you sign with Google?
Yeah.
And we just couldn't find anything like that. And so a lot of people, these were the days, this was before Privy. The main wallet as a service at that point was Web3 Auth. And people were actually asking us, because we had been working a little bit on like identity proofs for wallet recovery, like doing research on that. And people were like, oh, are you building like a wallet as a service? Like, we really need that. So like, okay, there's definitely a market demand for this. And we just cannot find anything that we can actually use for privacy protocol, anything that's self-custodial enough. So we're like, okay, what does it take to build a self-custodial wallet as a service? And then I started looking into the wallet as a service, and it just uncovered so many just crazy issues that I could not imagine why we were using these as our wallets. Like it's tough to, like, I'm not blaming the companies necessarily. I think it's really tough to build a secure and self-custodial wallet when you're working in an iframe, when you're embedding it in an app, because front ends are just not secure, and front ends don't have any permanent storage. So that means you have to store the keys somewhere else. If the key ever touches the front end, then it gets, then it's easy to compromise, because there are many ways to compromise the front end. And it turns out, the only way wallet developers knew how to do it in a somewhat self-custodial way is to put the key in the actual end, which made it super insecure. And so I would submit a number of like bug bounties to Wallet as a Service, then being like, hey, like, I found this way to drain user funds. I found this other way to drain user funds. And I eventually got kind of tired of it. Some had great responses. Some were like, okay, we acknowledge the issue, but don't plan to fix it. Man, we needed something that, and so it took about a year or two to come up with the final architecture of the wallet as a protocol, because it was really not trivial. We had to split the private key. We couldn't put all of it in the front end. We had to put only half of it in the front end. The other front end first we put in our server before we knew about Eka. And then we're like, oh, we can actually decentralize that too with Eka. And yeah, so it was quite difficult to build something that actually had like meaningful security and self-custody that could be embedded. But we just knew it was such a huge opportunity to be able to make something with the easy UI of something like Web3 auth, Privy, to sign with Google, get your wallet, but also the security of like a bank and a hardware wallet. So we saw opportunity and we're like, yeah, we have to do this. I don't care for identity project. Like we need to build a wallet too. Everybody told us it was a horrible.
Why did they think that it's a horrible idea?
Because we didn't know how to explain it back then. Now we say it's like Privy, but more self-custodial. It's free, soon to be open source, more secure, and people get that. People know Privy. People, But back then we didn't know how to explain it, and people are like, there are 1,000 wallets. Everybody's building wallet. Like, it's too competitive, and they wouldn't listen to even what it did because they're like, okay, it's just another wallet. So we had to find a way to tell the story where people would actually listen and not think it's just another wallet.
So how did you discover Eka? Because it's like when you start building on it, basically no one knew Eka. It was very niche project. It's like a couple of years back, I believe. So how did you discover Eka, and how was the experience of building on Eka?
Yeah, so how we found out about Eka was, I remember maybe 2 years ago, we were working on actually the architecture of the wallet as a protocol, figuring out how do we actually make this self-custodial. And we figured out everything except for censorship resistance, because we were storing half of the user's key on our server. And we thought, okay, well, our server still can't see the user's key, can't transfer the assets, can't steal assets, but it can block the user from transacting. So it's not as self-custodial as we'd like. And if only there was a way to decentralize the server. So I had been like actually trying to build the 2BC MPC protocol. I had not gotten very far. I'm not a team of genius cryptographers, but I had tried to sketch something out, and it's like, this is a way too hard a problem. We're just gonna use a server. And then I see David's message in, I think, some cryptography group chat, and it's 2PC MPC, a scalable non-collusive MPC. And I was like, oh, non-collusive MPC, that sounds very interesting. And I look into it, it actually solves the exact problem that we're facing. So I just messaged David and I was like, okay, we should meet up at the East Denver conference. And yeah, we met up, and it was like, oh my God, this is like the coolest team. I've always thought they're one of the top teams in the industry.
How was the experience of building on it after that initial introduction to the technology?
Building on it has been great. I mean, so we've been building on Ego for a while, like starting from like when they first launched testnet. And then of course, like there were some bugs, because anything just launching a testnet is always a bit difficult to build on. But then recently we essentially like redid the Eco architecture, and it's like super smooth now. So that was really nice.
Was it like totally intuitive? Oh, we could do all this stuff, or it was like challenging to build?
Yeah, no, I think it was pretty intuitive. Also, like, I'm a little biased because like I've been like, I read the 2BC MPC paper a while ago, like, and I've chatted with David like many times. So I've heard from him. So from my experience, like it made a lot of sense in different use cases and how you'd use it. But I think 2BC MPC is a hard thing to explain, right? Like,
yeah, it is.
Because I think a lot of people don't know the problems that it solves. I think a lot of people don't know that like collusion is a really big issue in MPC, scalability is a big issue. And once you know those issues, like 2BC MPC just makes total sense. But I think until you know the issues, it's like, okay, another bridge or another wallet.
There was this news that Privy got acquired by Stripe. There are obviously these problems that you mentioned in the initial part of while you were discovering how to build this. And now it got acquired by one of the biggest drivers of adoption to crypto. So do you think these problems are going to get worse? And how would wallet as a protocol Like, what is that adoption path from your perspective look like for wallet as a protocol?
Yeah, it's a great question. And yeah, in some ways, I think the problems are getting worse. And I think in other ways, that's making them get better because people are realizing the problems. So 2 years ago, when we would talk about, well, as a protocol and why, and even what the problems are, like people, they're like, no, 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 like Privy self-custodial, Matic self-custodial, and they say it's secure. It's all good. And they didn't know that it makes a different wallet for each app. There's no interoperability. Everybody was super happy with the state of things. And like, oh, account abstraction is going to fix everything now too. But now, a couple years later, now that like Privy is owned by Stripe, and we've seen like a large, buyout from these very centralized companies that lock people out of their account, like Stripe. I think people have started to realize, hey, it's a lot less self-custodial than we think, or than we had previously thought. It used to be that everybody thought Privy was self-custodial. Now, if you ask people, like, it's closer to 50-50 split, or some people are like, this is not self-custodial at all. And it's like, no, they say it's self-custodial. And the amount of people worried about wallet as a service are very high because now that the adoption's here, people are like really looking into it. And this is the moment we've been betting on. I'm glad it's coming now before a lot more people have their money in these wallets and it's too late to switch.
Once you launch the product, what is the next step for you to, get that adoption that you really want to bring this, this core principles of trust and decentralization and self-custody? What does that path look like for you?
Yeah, so the first step in our journey is focusing on businesses that want to onboard users. So apps, enterprise apps that want to onboard users and are thinking of using wallet as a service. We show them, hey, look, wallet as a protocol it's like everything wallet as a service does, but it's also free and way more secure and way more self-custodial. So, it's a compelling value prop. It's easy to get customers that way, but we are offering it for free. So then the next step is B2C. This is where I think the value of wallet as a protocol comes in. And this is also how we can make money because B2C is actually a lot more lucrative. If you look at like revenue of like wallet as a service versus like MetaMask is like, 40, 50 times as much money per user per year. And any consumer wallet, even like in Web 2, is like that. So this is also like, if we're onboarding people, we don't want to just onboard them to an app. We want to onboard them to universal wallet, which is the way they use crypto. So we see the main way that WAP is adopted in the long run is like you're using this on your own to prevent blind signing. Like you're using it for the security benefits. You're using it like sure some app onboarded you, but like this is your personal wallet. So that's our next step. Q1 we're just focusing on B2B. Maybe Q2, Q4 we start working on B2C adoption, which I think is like the real end game.
So what is that difference between B2B and B2C? Like, why does MetaMask make more money than for all these other wallet as a service?
Yeah, so as a wallet as a service, you're charging mostly for monthly fees for the user, and you're charging the businesses themselves. So these are businesses with like, hundreds of thousands, millions, tens of millions of users, and they're very sensitive to how much each user costs. On the other hand, when you're B2C, we have a few products that are both B2B and B2C. And something we notice is that like, sure, B2B, you can really easily get a lot of users, but the margins are going to be really low because the businesses do not want to pay like,
Yeah.
$40 per user. They'll pay like, a few cents per user. Now, on the other hand, like MetaMask, they make money from swap fees. And they make, last time I checked, I think it was definitely in the double digits. I think maybe $40 or $50 per user per year. And, PayPal, Venmo, also double digits. Most fintech apps, if you're directly working with the user and either like making money off of transaction fees or the float or swap fees, it tends to be super, super lucrative. And it's a win-win for the user too, right? Isn't really like, they're just using the MetaMask swap UI because of convenience. They can use a different swap, right? Or because they want to get the MetaMask airdrop, right? But, PayPal, Venmo, they're not losing any money by having it in there. PayPal, Venmo is just taking the float, right? So you get higher margins, but like nobody's really paying, which is a great thing about B2C.
So, like, I just want to understand it a bit more in the sense that when I, for example, if we can take an example of Farcaster or something like that. Oh, I logged into Farcaster and it provides me wallet. So consider if it's a wallet as a protocol wallet. So basically now it's a B2B wallet. How does it become like a B2C wallet later in that sense?
Yeah, so we think of WAP as universal wallet, and it's one wallet you can bring anywhere. So think of like MetaMask, think of browser extensions. Those are mobile apps or something with Wallet Connect. Like you can log in with any website to your MetaMask wallet. So WAP is like that as well. It doesn't have a browser extension at the moment. It uses Wallet Connect for that, but we're looking to ship a browser extension early to mid. So this is like the B2C side. It's your wallet. It's not an app wallet. It's your wallet. And with WAP, you can actually onboard users to their wallet from apps. Like users signs into Google with WAP on appname.xyz. So now they have a wallet that was created at appname.xyz. They're using it just like Privy or Magic or Web3 Auth on appname.xyz. But instead of just being limited to appname.xyz, it's your universal wallet. So next time they log into like another app.xyz, it's also the same wallet. Their balance will show up there as well. And then they have this universal wallet. They can transfer money to friends, to their centralized exchange account, to family, to use it with DeFi, stuff like that by visiting WAP.xyz. And then you have just the WAP without any app connected.
So are you using CK login for like Google login or something like that? Or do you have your own proprietary?
Yeah, for the login with socials, we use this protocol we developed called ZK injected mask, which is a lot like a oblivious pseudorandom function. It uses human network to essentially generate a random key from the login info.
Is it like similar to CK login technology, or is it something entirely different?
Yes and no. There's one similarity in that it injects this sort of value into the JSON Web Token, but I'd say they're more different than similar, and that instead of doing a ZK proof of the JSON Web Token, as you do a ZK login, here we're just doing a ZK proof of correctly masking the value. So we're actually not doing a general purpose ZK proof. We're just doing what's called a discrete log equality proof, which is super quick, super efficient. And the difference is that it's using our network. So the reason why we're able to do this sort of quick ZK proof is it's using the human network. And actually, we really do it so that one node in the human network can't replay attack you. They can't steal your web token and say like, okay, I'm this user, like give me the private key, and make sure that only the user can get the private key.
So now we talked about the human ID protocol and the wallet as a protocol, these two products. Then what is human network? Could you describe it?
Yeah, so human network creates human keys. It's what's called a decentralized oblivious pseudorandom function. So that means it's creating random keys from not very random inputs. So something that's a good cryptographic key is like very random. You cannot guess it, even if you try 2 to the 128th power times. But something that is memorable is not that random. Like, your name, let's say you're talking about a name, like, how many people there are, 8 billion people. You only have to guess 8 billion people, 8 billion times to guess someone's name. Probably far less because there are many common names. And passwords are another good example. On average, passwords people use have about 2 to the 40 bits of entropy. So you have to only guess 2 to the 40th power times, which is, not a small number, but it's something a computer can definitely do quickly. So passwords are not good cryptographic keys either. Same with like security questions, biometrics, these are like phone, like any personal information. So what you can do with that to turn it into a good cryptographic key, because there's so many use cases of making it a cryptographic key. One, for the wallet, right? If you can make a key from your identity, from like your social logins or from a password security question, from biometrics, like there are lots of wallet applications. And for our ZK identity, there's also other applications for something called nullifiers, which I won't get into unless you're interested.
I
Very
don't. So,
And yeah, so there are all these applications of ZK, and oblivious pseudonym functions for generating keys from identities. And so the way it works is it's using randomness from a network. The network never sees the input, never sees the identity, but it's able to provide what's called deterministic randomness. The same input will always get the same random output, but it's really hard to brute force because each time you want to brute force, you have to ask the network. And the network can say, hey, stop brute forcing, like you don't have enough credits.
So it is a network of like the way you imagine Eka network. It is another network of how many can you call like nodes or validators are in the network?
I believe right now we have approximately 20. So it's run by restaking protocols or by nodes in restaking protocols, so Eigenlayer and Symbiotic, and it uses restaked assets to secure the network.
So basically, now you have the human network, then wallet as a protocol, human ID. So how does it all connect together? Like, what is the grand vision of the whole thing you are building here?
Yeah, so we build tools for embedding digital human rights into the web, whether it's security, self-custody, privacy, access to finance, proof of personhood. And we believe that these are rights that people should have, and we should build resilient technology that prevents centralized capture of these rights. So we've built few different tools in different areas, and there's some overlaps. Like you can use the identity as like a plugin to WAP, for example. Like a lot of people want to log in with WAP and then also get identity proof from the user. Like we make it easy to sort of use our products together in that way. And, in the long run, we see the biggest difference and the biggest direction of focus being WAP because, this is where everything else starts, right? Like everything, privacy, security, all this stuff needs users to have self-custodial private keys, right? Like to use any cryptography, you need a private key. So WAP is really where all this starts. And we see WAP as like the main mission.
So while building WAP, how was your experience of using Sui to also build this protocol?
Excellent. Yeah. I mean, the reason we used Sui for it was, as for David's recommendation, which made a ton of sense that Sui uses Move and Sui is also like very fast. So for security policies, you want something that's like one, very secure, like Move, and two, it's not going to like cost a lot of money or take a lot of time to like make little updates to the security policy. So it just made a ton of sense to do it in Move and do it on Sui. And it's been a great experience. I like the Rust-like syntax. I'm a big fan of Rust. I mean, well, it's not Rust. It's like somewhat similar. So I like the aspect, and I'm kind of envious of the developer on our team that got to build with Move because I've been curious to try it out, but his experience has been good.
So if it's not wallet as a protocol, what other product would you build using Eka? Like if it's not WAP, is there something other, is there some serious problem that you could, from your perspective, that you could solve using something like Eka?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm so like dedicated to WAP. I'm like, this is the only thing I built. But
Yeah.
I think the bridging is something that could be explored a lot more. And I think it's definitely worth building. Like I would, yeah, I would build that if I wasn't building WAP. And that I think we've had so many trust assumptions in bridges, and bridges are also really, there's a good business model behind them. There's like, we know there's product market fit for bridges, right? Like, so if you can just build a more secure bridge with Eka, I think that's a really compelling value proposition. I also think there's a lot of interesting stuff for enterprise MPC, and that a lot of enterprises want MPC. And right now it's using more inclusive forms of MPC, but making a non-inclusive enterprise thing with 2PC MPC would be, I think 2PC MPC is just strictly better than MPC in most cases. So yeah, I think there's a lot of directions to go in enterprise.
And from your vantage point, where would we go from a technological adoption perspective, like in the next 4 to 5 years, let's say 2030? Where do you, because as a builder, you must have better, spider sense on, like based on your experience, yeah, this could happen. So where are we, from your perspective, where are we going?
Yeah, so I think there are two avenues of adoption, which are going to really rapidly. I think when growth happens, it's going to be very fast, right? Because on one hand, you have these enterprises that already have like hundreds of millions of users. And, when Stripe starts really getting serious about crypto, and which they already are, right? But now I feel like it's still sort of like still the early days of crypto for these big enterprises where it's like, okay, now we know we need it. We're investing a ton of resources into it, and like actually serious resources, not just like doing research, but like, actually getting ready to use this stuff in our products. When they do use it in their products, I think it's going to be like a really, it's going to suddenly change things. I mean, there's just going to be so much adoption all of a sudden. And the other avenue of growth is also going to be, I think, very sudden, which is developing countries. So a lot of searches in Argentina, and people are using crypto there, not so much for payments, although people are using crypto for payments. But the main use case is just like the currency is so quickly devaluing that you really need a more stable way to put your money in. And you see this in countries in Africa as well. Like there are lots of countries where you see this, but universally, it's done through exchanges, through centralized exchanges. And like, why is that? Well, one, because they have big brands, they're familiar. Two, also like the peer-to-peer exchanging protocols in some cases are really good on Binance and just have more liquidity, more options. But if we can see this go on chain instead of stay with centralized exchanges, it's really huge. I mean, right now there are, I think there are billions of dollars in remittances going to Mexico with crypto, for example. There's really lots of real world use cases for both remittances and savings to fight inflation. And imagine bringing all these people to DeFi, right? Imagine not just saving your money against inflation, but also being able to get like 15% yield on it with just stablecoin strategies. So instead of like losing 20% a year from inflation, you're getting 15% a year. Like, I think this is, it is like a no-brainer value prop, right? So just bringing that value prop to more people, showing them that they can even do it, I think is super powerful. And something like this would grow, I think, very quickly.
And in that world, if human tech is wildly successful, what would that look like for human tech?
Yeah. I mean, it has to be, in my opinion. Everybody, like, if there are hundreds of millions of people using crypto, like, it's not going to be MetaMask. It's going to be wallet as a service or wallet as a protocol. And if it's wallet as a service, like, we're in for some really big security vulnerabilities, or there are some really like, there are going to be huge security incidents. There are going to be lots of regulatory scrutiny on self custody as well. It's like, once everybody's using this wallet that a company is claiming, oh yeah, it's not the user's keys, but it's not our keys either. Whose keys is it? Oh, it's Google and Twitter. They have the keys. Like, like, this is not, I don't think governments will really like this in the long run. Like, there's no future with the current, like, there is a future with the current or its architecture, but it's limited. I think itself, hopefully with WAP and human tag, it's self-correcting before governments have to get involved and say, maybe let's not trust everybody's assets with like social logins, but the social logins don't even know that they're storing the user's assets. Like, this is not like, the whole point of like self custody, or the whole point of like regulations around custodians, has been to protect consumers and make sure if you're custodying user funds, you do it right. And I'm not sure this is the right way to be like, oh no, we don't have the keys, they have the keys. Like, nobody owns the funds. If it gets lost, it's nobody's fault. Yeah. So if we don't want users' funds lost and we don't want this regulatory scrutiny, then WAPA is the only way to go, I think.
And we didn't even touch upon the points like how can you, like, a WAP could be like totally programmable in a sense that spending limits or adding other kind of, passkeys, or, you could make it totally very bank like the kind of UX that are people used to bank. Like, nobody's going to steal my ATM card and going to steal like all the money in there, because they maybe I have a spend limit of €1,000. They can take that €1,000, then I'll figure it out and maybe, block that card. Like, there are a lot of possibilities even with VAP that we didn't even touch on. I mean, that kind of, I think something that is not interoperable, or like these centralized custody solutions like this wallet as service, is totally incompatible for that kind of work.
Exactly. Yeah. So the nice thing about 2BC MPC is that you can have policies that operate a lot like a bank, but don't have custody of user funds. So the reason why, I mean, banks have the least secure logins, yet somehow they're secure, right? Like, you log in with like a password and a text sent to your phone, and then suddenly you have like, tens of thousands of dollars that nobody steals. Well, no, people try to steal it. I mean, you're giving your debit card to like dozens of websites a year or more, but the banks will have like fraud monitoring, they'll have policies, and these really do a lot to prevent people. So if you can do those without custodying user funds like banks, I mean, that's what 2PC and 2PC MPC allow, and WAP allows. And yeah, so you can have that security and customize the policies.
And so in that kind of world, you definitely have like a first mover advantage there to build this suite of products, like features onto this wallet. I hope that WAP becomes super successful in that world. We get that kind of compromising any of the, basic principles that of this space, I guess.
Yeah, me too.
So thank you, Nanak. Thank you for taking the time. And it's a really interesting conversation. I think this is like the things that the products that you're building is one of the most relevant, but the least talked about. Even you have like millions of users. The people even don't know that your solutions have like a really good product market fit and adoption. So it's always exciting to chat with a builder like you. And thank you for taking the time.
Likewise. Thanks, Serge.